Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the 2012 show. And today, of course, is February the 12th, 2012, and we have an excellent show for you today. The show title is Astral Programming and the 3 Days of Darkness Explained, and of course, Activation 101. So we're going to go ahead and get right into this because it sounds like our sound is pretty clear, and we got clarification from the chat room that everyone is hearing us clear. And of course, I have my panel on the line. Wes and Crystal are joining us today to share some more information. And so we're just going to go ahead and get right into this. It's important first, before we begin, that I state the Resistance Prime Directive, or what we're actually here to do, so that people are very clear about the information that we present from time to time. Of course, we just recently did a post in regards to the Super Bowl halftime ritual, and that post was broken down by myself Kabbalistically. And the reason I felt it was necessary to do that post was not only the large amount of attention that was placed on the subject, but also the incorrect interpretations from many of the different factions and people that were attempting to interpret the knowledge. And I just come to discover more of that. When knowledge is misinterpreted, it's at times even worse than when it's not interpreted at all. So the resistance stands as a beacon to many different individuals, many different kind of people, or as I say, different kind of beings, in order to bring them to their next level of balance, ascension, and even descension, because we're supposed to be going up and down the tree, continuously cycling our energy. So in order to do that, at times, we must go into more or less the lower states of consciousness, and we can even term this deep sea fishing, going into the lower states of consciousness and pulling people up from there. But in order to do that, at times, we have to cite information and bring forth information that is directly involved with those arenas. So, of course, the Super Bowl halftime show was one of those topics where we had to get into the rap industry, we had to get into sports, we had to get into many of the things like that, and how that connects with the darker forces or the darker thought forms, such as the negative Nephilim and the dark queens, etc. And however, what also happens is that because people find that just as entertaining, just the people abroad in the masses that may have not come to understand what ascension is really about, because they find those topics entertaining when they're broken down, it also becomes a perfect opportunity for us to allow a person to come into the network, read something that they're interested in, and then also see something else that may interest them, and then they start to look around, and then that begins the process of them actually waking up. So I don't want people to feel like we're focusing on negative information without any reason or cause. In actuality, what we're doing is we're still creating those bridges to individuals that don't know what's really going on but want to know. And then when they do that, they also find themselves in a site that has a plethora of information about other topics that are more pertinent. The next thing is that, so again, just to understand that we do have an obligation to the youth, and we do have an obligation to those individuals that are not in the know. And to fulfill that obligation, we must at times bring our content to a more approachable level, or something that is more popular, for better lack of words, in order to get people into what is obviously not as popular, which is ascension and the awakening of the spirit body. In addition to that, when things are explained on the surface, it oftentimes doesn't have the impact, and I'll explain this. Basically, when you saw a lot of the interpretations of what was going on in the Super Bowl, it was still the surface, Masonic, white and black, checkerboard, et cetera, and just the surface explanation. And what is important to do at times, because with those surface explanations, they match up with all the rest of the Occupy, Wall Street, Bilderberger, Zeitgeist type information. However, it's much deeper than that. We dig deep into how it subconsciously programs the psyche, the frequencies, the Kabbalah, and what it really means to use certain letters, numbers, and symbols. And so this becomes important even beyond the Madonna situation and the Super Bowl situation, because it gives you tidbits of information that allow you to understand exactly what is taking place in the reality. So if you also notice that there was a lot of information brought forth about the thought forms and about their presence on the astral plane. And that is also what today's conversation is really about. We're going to talk about the 3 days of darkness. We're going to talk about the astral plane and astral programming. We're going to talk a little bit about codes to program the astral plane. And also we're going to talk about the children. So there's quite a few things that we need to cover in this show. So it has been scheduled for an hour and a half. The first thing that I'm going to begin with before I let Crystal come on the line and share some of the information that she's uncovered about music is I'm going to talk really deeply about Kundalini. So I'm going to give you the activation 101 with the Kundalini force so you can understand exactly what should be taking place within your body in order to progress into a higher state of spiritual energy. Because this is a very vivid situation that you will feel spiritually, physically, and mentally when you have achieved it. So as we talked about before, it's not good to say that you've achieved something that you haven't, because then it doesn't set you up to receive it at all. But when you identify it completely, then you can actually receive it. So Kundalini force is associated with the destroyer. And many people would think that it's a negative aspect. However, we talked about before how things that appear to be negative actually have a plethora of positive uses. So in this case, what the destroyer comes in to do is to destroy a lot of the old molds and negative energies, habits, and things that you formed in your life that you cannot deal with yourself, for better lack of words. So the destroyer comes in and moves these energies out of the way. And how it does that is by bringing your body up into a higher vibratory field that actually cracks these shells, which the actual term is shells, or energy off of you. So what happens because of how we're formed is negative energies will envelop your field. And when you go into higher frequencies, they have no choice but to break or crack or let loose of your auric field. So that's what this is about. So what we have going on is that the Kundalini is also conscious. So it's not something that a person can just say, well, I'm going to go and get Kundalini today. It requires that there be a harmonic situation going on inside, and more than anything, an intent and a directive of why you actually feel like you need Kundalini energy. Now, in the time in which we're experiencing where the world is speeding up, it's no mystery now that there's definitely going to be a lot more spiritual exposure and spiritual presence here in 2012. And it's going to just get stronger and stronger and stronger as we keep going through these solar and lunar cycles. So we know that Kundalini is directly tied to the solar and lunar cycles. So what you'll experience when there's a full moon or when there's a lot of solar flares is you'll experience higher levels of energy coursing through your body. But if you do notice, there are other people who, while some may be feeling something, others don't feel anything at all. So we want to identify exactly what is causing those who don't feel anything when the solar and lunar cycles continue to increase, why they don't feel anything. And this gets deep into the programming that's taking place on the dimension, which is to make people more dense. So density, which is like a rock, makes it very difficult for you to vibrate. What you're working on is you're working on getting your body more soluble with the proper fluids so that your vibrational frequency can continue to oscillate. So this will be no different than the electrolytes that are located within a battery that allow that battery to stay charged because of the kind of fluid that they are. So you'll find products like Ethereum Gold, Ethereum Black, Altera, Shilajit, Chulin. All of these elements are to increase the consistency of your fluid levels in your body so that when they ignite with the Kundalini force, that fuel is basically the proper fuel to burn and can insulate you properly as the energy is coursing through your body. So how this works, though, is on the deeper level, we'll find that because Kundalini is a feminine force, there is a lot that especially men are doing that prevent them from accessing the Kundalini. So we're going to get deep into exactly how that works. Now, of course, Kundalini is directly tied into the male seminal fluid. And this is why books such as Montauk Chai's Multi-Orgasmic Man have been introduced on the website, and you'll find that on the website available for download for free. And what this does is it gives you the step-by-step process of how to begin to cycle your fluids, your sexual fluids, up the base of your spine, and how to prevent from wasting your energy. So what you'll find is that the semen also age, that the longer that they're held within the male's body, the more developed and the more mature they become. This actually gives a development and maturity to the male body. In addition to that, the fluid itself must be very rich. If you read the book Christ is Kundalini, it talks about that the fluid itself has to reach a consistency to where it's basically very potent versus more of, for better lack of words, a pussy-like fluid that is generally generated by men who eat excessive amounts of junk food and excessive amounts of sugars and things of this nature. So the fluid that your body is producing is actually going to be a lot weaker. So if you really want to understand how powerful the internal womb is of the male is actually taking food, whether it be cheeseburgers or whether it be organic or organic products, and converting that back into life through the semen. So I'll say that again. When the male consumes food, it is ultimately turned into semen, a great part of it. And that's why when a male ejaculates, the body feels completely tired, it feels hungry, then it feels like it needs more energy, because when the male is producing semen, the entire body, because it's about reproduction, focuses all its energy on that. So this is why wasting semen actually takes life force out of the male. So what you'll further discover is that we're able to not only take this food and turn it into semen, but we're also able to take these semen and then raise them up into higher levels, and this equals for the male a higher current on the dimension. Basically, if you're experiencing problems with your finances, if you're experiencing problems with your love life, if you're experiencing wherever you're experiencing problems, it starts to give you the energy to knock down those walls and those problems. But it all starts there. It all starts right in the base of the genitalia in those areas. So what ends up happening is that with most males, this is of course why porn was introduced, is that it has the male all the way from the state of adolescence and very young, continuously wasting their semen. And concepts of how to hold the semen are not even introduced in the Western culture, and this breeds a weaker male. In addition to that, it's known that facilities such as Planned Parenthood and many of those facilities that are erected for more challenged couples or more challenged families that are having problems with money, that many of the things that are within the vaccinations actually take strength out of the child also. So this becomes very important for the mother or the father to watch and what they're allowing to be administered to their child, especially from organizations that you know are for people that are financially challenged. There's always alternatives. You just have to look for those alternatives and don't just give your child over to the authorities. What ends up happening is that the reason why there is an agenda to not only weaken the male but also the female is it makes them more susceptible to programming. It is less of a barrier or less of a resistance to information that is coming across every single day about suggesting things that you should not be doing. So let's get into this even deeper. What you'll find is that if you notice when the situation between the male and the female when they enter into intercourse for the first time, it's already known that in many cases the male will have a relationship with the female or sex with the female and then won't show up anymore, like what they call the one-night stand. What this is really about is this is not positive, of course, for the female, but it's really negative for the male also, because what actually happens is that he continuously loses more ground with the Kundalini force in the earth, because, of course, it's very disrespectful to the feminine to just go out there and only use her for that particular reason. But it's also just disrespectful to the body of the male, because what actually happens is you send a signal to your brain that says it's only about this. And since it's not, this actually puts the male in a mental state, an emotional state, to where he is not as attracted to the female energy as he should be. This transcends just a simple relationship between male and female, but actually gets more into the male's relationship with the planet. So this means that if the male starts to disrespect the female and not respect the female, then he actually also starts to disrespect the planet. He doesn't feel as enthusiastic about what he should be doing for the planet, just like he doesn't feel as enthusiastic about what he should be doing for his female. So if you notice, there's another situation that occurs for those of you that are in relationships. You can definitely bear witness to this, is that when you have climax and you've allowed your semen to be spilled, at that point, it seems like in the mind that things start popping up in regards to how this relationship may not work and how this may be not what you want, etc. So if you notice that basically when you are ready to have intercourse, there is a high level of thought in regards to the feminine principle. After you have intercourse, if you spill your semen, there's a lower level of thought in regards to the feminine principle. What you'll find is if you hold the semen, there continues, like one of the old thermometers, a continuous rising of your seminal fluid up the base of your spine. Almost as if every time that you have intercourse and you don't ejaculate and you cycle the energy properly, then you gain a level on the ladder of your spine. Just as a thermometer, when you see that when you see that red dial continuously rise, that is what's happening with your Kundalini every time that you choose not to ejaculate your semen improperly. In fact, the only time that a male should ejaculate is when he is producing a child. And then that child comes out much more stronger and potent because the semen has been cultivated properly through its gestation process. In addition to that, as the female has an external womb and is responsible for birthing life into the external dimension, the male has an internal womb. And if he can bring his semen through the complete period of gestation up to his dad's pain, then he actually births the homunculus, which is the secret of the golden lotus, or basically a being that is birthed on the internal realm that works in conjunction with the person, works in conjunction with the male. Now, there is also knowledge that this has been done on a negative level, meaning that some have been able to birth the homunculus or a negative homunculus and use a negative internal being in order to push their agenda forward. So this is not something that is specific to a person being positive or negative. But do understand the knowledge is that once you birth a homunculus, meaning an actual spirit, it's called an inception rather than a conception. A conception is when the child is birthed into an external world. An inception is when the child is birthed into an internal world. But it's still a child nonetheless. So if the individual that has gone through this process teaches the child, because it will be instructing them internally, teaches the child to do negative things, then they have now even more of a problem because they have an actual internal child that is very negative. So that gives you a general idea about how Kundalini works in conjunction with the male. And so we're going to get into now how it works in conjunction with the female. Now, of course, we were created here as androgynous beings, that there was never a separation between male and female. And now we're experiencing a physical separation. So I will say it for the record now that it is highly possible to raise Kundalini without a physical counterpart. Meaning, if you're a male, it is possible to raise Kundalini without a female by simply tapping more into your feminine side and understanding how to cycle the energy internally with complete respect for the energy, the body, the earth, etc. This also applies for the female. The female is capable of raising her orgasmic energy, which it is for her. The Kundalini is orgasmic for her, and she's capable of even doing that with her mind and with her breathing techniques and many of the deep breathing techniques. So when you get into the higher states, you begin to feel this orgasmic or organ fluid flowing through your body. In addition, when you have the male stomach area is where all of this energy is building. So in effect, the male would have a layer, if you could see it would have a layer within around the stomach area. So what happens is that, so when the male builds the Kundalini, there becomes a magnetic layer around his stomach area. And when he presses that layer against the female, it ignites because she has the yang force. If you do the yin and the yang, she has the other force. So when these two forces unite, basically within our torso area, or the torso of our body, it actually generates that torsion field that becomes perpetual. So the actual highest state of Kundalini between the physical male and the physical female ends in a blissful unity of where both of the parties come out of the body and actually spiral together upwards without having to focus on cycling the energy, because the energies have now become perpetual. So that is the actual point that one is attempting to achieve in this unity. So understand that there is a deep level of true love and true compassion that must be used when interacting with these forces, or they just don't work. This is the number one reason why many people are having a hard time raising Kundalini. If for the male, it's because of his semen, and then for the female, it's because of the interactions that she is getting from the male energy on the environment. So when we can push past that and allow ourselves to go into that free energy state, because this is now free energy because it's your energy, when you can get into that free energy state, then you can see the benefits to what I'm speaking of. Now, what's also happening on the dimension, I will brief you very fast in regards to the state that you're experiencing here on Earth. Many people have been going back and forth, including myself, about whether Earth is organic, is Earth a clone, is Earth a hologram, is Earth just Kundalini, what is Earth? What Earth actually is 5%. What you're seeing of Earth is 5 to 10% of what's really here. Because what humanity is experiencing right now is a phase lock. A phase lock is when a group of beings are more or less trapped in a particular frequency or confined in a particular frequency or part of the spectrum. So what you'll find is that, let's say, for instance, Earth, let's look at it as a pizza that has 20 ingredients. At 5%, 5 to 10% of the realization of what Earth truly is, you're only getting olives right now. You haven't even started with dough. You haven't started with tomatoes. You haven't started any of that. So what you're seeing is olives. What's really here is an entire pizza. Being able to see that is what you're working for. You're working to basically break yourself out of the cube. The reason why a person has been put in a cube is through a process that's known as squaring the circle. This term is often used within the Masonic guilds, but it is the knowledge of how to basically trap spirits or place spirits inside of vessels. And of course, the current vessel that we're in is a dodecahedron or a pentagram. But even deeper than that, there is a cube that the spirit sometimes finds itself confined in before it breaks out. And one is encouraged to oscillate the two fields of these cubes, which is basically two triangles on a three-dimensional level, and in order to vibrate themselves out of the cube and to actually utilize their astral vehicle. So that's mainly the topics that I wanted to discuss. So of course you can see that the phase lock that is taking place on this dimension that's keeping us from seeing the rest of what's really here is a hack. It's not something that is supposed to originally be going on. That's not how we were originally created. It's a hack that was put into place by the controllers who discovered the knowledge of exactly how we were put together in the universe. So this knowledge, of course, was in Egypt. This knowledge was, of course, in Samaria. This knowledge was definitely in the Orient. This knowledge was in many places, especially Ethiopia, Africa. And we are only in a black hole of knowledge right now that we're coming out of. So it's very important to see. Just if I was looking at a documentary the other day on top documentaries in regards to Russia. And it showed so many things that were important for us to know. However, how many people actually get a chance and an opportunity to watch the documentaries on places like Russia? It's becoming less and less. So this means that we are losing a great body of knowledge that has already been accumulated. As I said before, the trees, from the Latin terms that were given to the trees and different plants, are so specific that it actually gives us the Kabbalistic value and even the spiritual value of each plant and tree that we're dealing with. However, when is the last time that you've seen someone actually study trees and plants for their names that were someone already spent lifetimes, multiple people spent lifetimes documenting that information and keeping that information cohesive? So again, what we're dealing with here is a state that has to be reversed, which is putting us into higher levels or lower levels of ignorance. So in saying that, I also wanted to talk about that if in the 5% or 5 to 10% that we have of viewing this reality, if the person gets used to that, the danger when they are made aware of the 100% right away has almost the same effect as what we call shock. So this is the reason why, because humanity is still in this thinking that they're the only ones that are here, they haven't been exposed to any real levels of spirituality that are vivid. They have this false faith based on a God that never communicates, etc. So at any point where the veils are lifted or the gates are open and the person sees all of what's here, of course it's going to create a certain level of shock. And this is why it was known in the ancient teachings that you should never wait for death to get familiar with the astral world. And as we talked about before, the Kundalini or the Christ, and this is now what I've discovered is the deepest misinterpretation about Jesus Christ and the Christ. Jesus Christ is a two-part word. Jesus is the son of Zeus, as it states. And Christ is the crystalline nature, the crystal pure nature of our whole frequency field, the light field itself. So when we speak of Christ now, we're speaking of the energy, not the individual who has attached their name to the energy. So there have been many Christs, but when you put a name in front of that, that becomes very specific. So if a person says, oh, I'm Jesus Christ and I'm the only Christ, then you're dealing with an actual antichrist, because the whole energy of Christo is to spread the energy to everyone else. So at any point if someone says, I'm the only one, this is actually going opposite, or it's opposing the real, or it's opposing the Kundalini force. It's opposing the Christ force. So let us keep that clear at all times. So what we have this opportunity to do here on this planet, because the energies here are helping, meaning that the lunar cycles, the solar cycles are building up this energy for individuals that become more soluble. There was something that needs to be discussed very briefly in regards to salt and frequency, how those two work together. What you'll notice is if you ever deal with frequency baths, I think they have certain frequency baths that they allow you to take, but that's how we use the machines such as the GB4000. If you want to put the frequency into your body, one of the easiest ways to do it is through your feet first. So, of course, you run 2 tubs of water, and then you put in the electrodes, and then you place your feet in there. However, if you just put regular water, you won't feel anything. But when you add salt into the water, then you feel something, because salt creates. So thing to know is that the salt level in our body does create a level of conductivity. But because salt is a crystal, one is to ask themselves, what kind of crystal are they using? So if it's the salt crystal from the cheeseburger, if it's the salt crystal from Uncle Ben's rice, these are not the salt crystals that will tap you into and make you soluble enough to receive the higher frequencies. They're actually the crystals that will make you receive a certain or specific wavelength of frequency. So understand, the salt is the key, and that's why the biochemical cell salts are different kinds of salt that adjust the pH and the solubleness of the body. And that's one thing that was amazing. Just this one little tab that was placed under the tongue that even tastes a little like sugar can then alter the entire pH system and energy system of the body. And as we talked about before, a person is generally deficient on one particular energy salt or biochemical salt that is the one that is primary to their node, meaning that when they're born at a certain time, there's a certain salt that becomes their primary salt. And that's why the biochemical cell salts are laid across the zodiac chart. And it shows you which salt, as you'll see on the actual link of the biochemical cell salts on the resistance, it'll show you what is your primary salt, and then more than likely, almost guaranteed, you're deficient on that salt because all of the salts that you see in the biochemical cell salt kit are very seldom included inside of your food supply. So this also furthers to make sure that this also is another agenda by the controllers to make sure that you never tap into your hidden potential. But remember, now is the time where there is so much going on that factions such as the Men in Black, factions such as the controllers in Hollywood have so many other things to contend with that you can make your way into the ascent and the descent and the ascent and the descent and the full cycling of your energy right now without receiving any impedance. And this is something that you should really, really work on doing now, because all the knowledge and the wisdom that was not even available 2 or 3 years ago is now available here for you, obviously as a sign or a gesture as a gesture from the universe saying that this is the time that you can become free if you want. But those particular time cycles only come at certain integers. And as we see that 2012 has now been labeled as the time where things are supposed to really pick up and things are happening, and it's actually showing to be true. So when I get back on, I'll talk about the 3 days of darkness. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Crystal on the line, and she's going to discuss a little bit about music and how to alter even some of your favorite songs that are positive that you feel are positive into the frequency that actually equals positivity. Crystal, are you with us?
I sure am. Sevan, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, thanks. I just wanted to quickly go back to the woman's Kundalini energy and cultivating the female sexual energy, that Mantak Chai book that you can find in the Resistance Library. That book will teach you something called ovarian breathing, to be specific. And because every time we have a menses, our egg or eggs that get released into our fallopian tubes and make their way down to our uterus, the amount of energy in that egg is so incredible, right? It can support life. So it's that perfected energy concentrated, and you can learn how to breathe up that perfect energy and cycle it in your body to revitalize your organs and, of course, become multi-orgasmic. So with every orgasm, our Kundalini raises, and we can definitely layer those orgasms on top of each other like the man can and another to create kind of like a perfect, almost permanent orgasm in our brain, much like with the tantric practices. Your pineal and your pituitary glands become so stimulated on a regular basis that, a state of bliss can be achieved and kept consistently. So I just wanted to add that to what you were talking about earlier before I get on to the other topics. But, just before I do start about music, I wanted to quickly mention, too, a lot of the really great benefits many of us have been receiving from taking part in the Skype life coaching chats that we have on Wednesdays. I just wanted to say to members, they're a great way to get to know other members on the Resistance on a more personal level. And, of course, with Sevan being there, you can definitely get many of your answers to all of your questions, unlike with the radio show here where we have kind of like a set amount of topics to cover, and then we try to stuff as many questions in the end as possible, which doesn't always work out time-wise. But, you're not obligated to ask questions or even answer any of them. You can simply just listen in. We usually will all just kind of introduce ourselves in the beginning and then set an intention for the conversation. Then from there, it's kind of just all free-flowing, and we just talk about many things. I do know that, shyness and fear can sometimes come into play when you may be deciding whether or not to join us. But, as Sevan has often said, you need to use that fear as an energy source and kind of breathe it up into yourself to bring about the courage to maybe do the things that you usually wouldn't, to kind of move you forward on your path. So fear and all of its symptoms are, often just kind of felt at the very point when you're about to break through and achieve growth, so to speak. So that's definitely one of the main goals here on the Resistance, as well as the Dimension. So I would highly recommend it. It's been very energizing, and just the boost that you need to get through this kind of the second half of your week. We can take up to 25 members on the calls, and the last time we had about 8, so it would be really great to see more members on there for sure. The last one we had formally was on February 1st, but actually just this last Wednesday I had my Skype on, and all of a sudden I was getting messages from members wondering if there was a Skype chat. And I said that no, we didn't have one scheduled for today, and that it was kind of an older post still up on the site. But then we just kind of came to the conclusion that we would have one anyways, and it was really, really informative. And it lasted about 3 hours, with, again, another 8 members included on the call. So I think from now on we're just going to do them every week, every Wednesday. So now I think it's 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And just see who shows up present. And if you're unsure about what time that is for you, because I know we have pockets of resistance all over the world here, there's actually a conversion chart that one of our other members put up on that Skype life coaching post in the comments area. So you can look at that to kind of figure out what time you need to be on your Skype. And, Skype is free, and all you need is a headset. So it's pretty plug and play. So we definitely invite you to come and join us for that, because it's been really, really good. And now I'm actually going to talk a little bit about music, too. Actually, we got to discussing in the Skype chat on Wednesday about how the standard concert pitch was originally set at 432 hertz, which is actually a resonance that's very deeply connected to nature. And when singers would go into those higher octaves, their vocal cords would actually be protected against the damage in that 432 hertz. But back in, I think it was 1939, when Germany was starting to get into power, the German Nazi propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, he decided that 440 was going to be used as the new standard tuning pitch. So there was obviously an agenda behind this. This was to lead people to think and kind of feel in a very certain way, and to keep them kind of a prisoner of a certain consciousness, so to speak. So recently there's been some really cool new discoveries on the vibratory nature of how the universe operates, and it suggests that the current concert pitch of 440 may possibly generate kind of a unhealthy effect or even antisocial behavior in the consciousness of human beings. So, no surprise there. That extra little 8 hertz actually changes and creates a bit of a dissonant interference in our brainwaves and how we think. And the DNA, in turn, then has to oscillate to kind of protect itself against that interference, the stress of it. So, in turn, they are saying it may ultimately kind of affect the ability of our DNA to regulate our genetic makeup properly. So, that's pretty huge when you think of that. Because just to go a little bit deeper about how our ears interpret sound waves, the inner ear works, it receives the sound on the basis of phi dampening. So the waters of our inner ears rely on the Fibonacci spiral to dampen through our cochlea to kind of keep us feeling centered or grounded, if you will. And the spiral helps to cancel out certain wave interference patterns to keep us properly balanced in our natural environment. So when the inner ear is put under stress, it can actually create a foggy or spaced out experience. So I also discovered, too, that there's a measurable phenomenon out in space that supports the 432 hertz resonance, and that is that Saturn actually orbits the sun once every 864 years of its cycle, so 432 times 2, which makes it the best precessional timekeeper of all the planets. So I found that to be quite interesting. And of course, all the frequencies affect our DNA and consciousness. So, if you change your frequency, you can ultimately change the perception of the dimension for yourself. So, interestingly, there's also people who, are very skilled at listening to audio files, and they have also reported that the 432 hertz music seems to be kind of non-local, if you will, and that can appear to kind of fill a room. Whereas with the 440, it can be perceived as directional or linear in sound. So I found that to be interesting too. And with today's music, it's all out in the open, full frontal. You have acts like the Black Eyed Peas, for example, who are obviously heavily pushing the ideologies of transhumanism and trying to get people, used to that idea. And then you've got Lady Gaga, who's going around chanting raw and, dressing in meat clothing and telling people to put up their claws at her concerts. So, not to mention her obvious homosexual and androgynous influence on people of all ages, not just specifically young people, but everyone. And of course, the hip hop industry is chock full of rappers like Kanye, Kanye West, and Lil Wayne, and Drake, or as they say, Draco on Resistance, putting up their diamonds up, as Jay-Z would say, which of course is nothing more than a pledge of their allegiance to those with the power over them. So there's them, and of course Rihanna and Christina Aguilera with their S&M and their sex kitten programming motifs, and you have Katy Perry, who's singing about, extraterrestrials and how she's ready to be swept up by them, and then you have Bruno Mars telling your kids to be eternally lazy, or I actually just saw this video the other day. I was just kind of researching for today's show, and they've had this little thing called Lana Del Rey, and her music video is called Born to Die, so I was like, I gotta check this out. This is definitely going to be dark, and yeah, it's very somber, and the kind of video takes place in a church, and she's kind of sitting on a throne all dressed in white with a crown on, and she's got two tigers beside her, and it's a very somber sounding song, and it kind of, the lyrics are really just suggesting your kids to get high on weed when life gets hard, because in the end, you were born to die anyways. So it's really just a pointless video, but of course, it's going to get millions of hits, like a lot of these videos do, and so, that people are seeing it, especially kids as well. So, and you can't forget, poor Britney Spears, in one of the earliest projects. I mean, she's probably on her third or fourth round of reprogramming by now, and we all know her story and how she kind of went crazy there and, started shaving her head and telling the women in the salon that she didn't want people plugging things into her head anymore. So, she was so essential in shaping young minds of little girls everywhere who are now, preteens or young women, and still is to some degree. So, it is certainly a growing epidemic that is showing no signs of slowing. So, we definitely need to be there as a beacon for these young minds, so when they are seeking, they see the resistance, and they can go there and quickly, learn some things to combat what's going on around them, to make them aware and in the know. Like, I had my sister over here about a week ago, and there's just quite a big difference in between us, age-wise. She's 13 years younger than I am, so she's 17, almost 18. And I was doing more research for the show, and so I was asking her, I was like, so, what kind of music are you listening to these days? And she's like, well, I'm pretty much into shock rap. And I'm like, what is shock rap? She's like, well, there's this guy called Tyler, the Creator, and she shows me one of his videos called Yonkers. Now, this video's had like 40 million hits, It's ridiculous. And, she telling me shock rap is kind of underground, and I was like, okay. So I watched the video, and it was disturbing to say the least. I mean, halfway through, without sparing too many details, he eats a cockroach and then throws it up. And then his eyes go pure black, and at the end he hangs himself. So,
whoa.
Wow. Yeah, so I researched him a bit more, and I found out that he openly talks about his alter ego. And he gets possessed, he says, by this person called Wolf Haley. And apparently when Wolf gets into Tyler, all bets are off, and he does these crazy things. That's his words exactly. So I watched another video, I forget what it's called, but where a bunch of him and his friends, who call themselves Odd Future,
wow.
they fill a blender up with random prescription medication and then top it off with a 40 of OE and drink it all between them. And then the chaos ensues. So, you can plainly see the message being conveyed here, and of course the younger generations are at the epicenter of the madness. So, and then
to just not let that just go by without saying something about it. I mean, me over here, I'm shocked. I wasn't aware of that particular gentleman. I do remember seeing some video where the guy's eyes did turn all black like that. And I just wanted to say something very briefly to individuals who feel like it's not their responsibility to talk to people about consciousness, because we've been going back and forth with that like a seesaw, and I'll explain why. I was explained very deeply that when you're in the middle, let's talk about how to actually use the right terms to explain what is really going on here. Now, when you're in the middle and you're not moving, this state is actually called death. They call that, so the equilibrium, as people call it, is actually a state of death. And it takes a really good visualization to see exactly what is happening. When people play neutral, or they say the white line in the middle of the road is the wrong place to drive, what you have to realize is that what we are is we're sound. So we move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this causes an oscillation. So the faster that you can move, the more you can stay balanced. So I want everyone to visualize a teeter-totter, which is the thing that you used to play with as a child. One sits on one side, another sits on the other, and they go up and they go down. Now, imagine that you're standing in the middle of a teeter-totter. Now, if you run right, of course, the other end is going to drop and fall because your weight from the right side is going to drop in. I tell you that what you're supposed to be doing is running back and forth so fast that no end drops. That is actually what balance is. Standing in the middle, as far as how that's termed in physics, how that's termed on astral knowledge, etc., standing in the middle means death because you're actually not moving at all. And there's nothing that is active, that is powerful, that is jubilant, etc., that does not move. So do keep that in mind when you visualize what neutral and harmonic is, that you don't visualize it as you standing in the center and not moving. Visualize it as you ran back and forth so fast that it was balanced. And this is how your energy is cycling too. It's going up, down, up, down, up, down. Notice how everyone does really talk about the ascension and never mentions the descension. And if someone talks about descension, someone says, wait a minute, is he trying to lead us down? So you see there's misconceptions all around about what's supposed to be going on. And the terminology that's being used within the words, where one word is used to explain how everything's supposed to work. So like harmony becomes balance, becomes the center, becomes the white line, etc. And this is when a person tries to run all these words together. But in reality, you have to use the actual the frame that we've been put on, like as living beings, what you know belongs to the Most High and the creators of this universe. You have to use the laws and the principles in there because those are the universal laws, because that's what's keeping you alive. Like if something wasn't working, then you wouldn't be alive. So all you have to do is find the correct correspondence to what is going on the higher level here, and you'll find it. Just like they say, the Sephiroth, the tree of life, is the actual diagram of how, that's just another diagram for the body. And when the energy is zigzagging up the tree, as they say, this is how the energy moves and ping-pongs off your chakra centers, which are not in a straight line. So it's interesting to see now that what's been going on is that they've been laying their template over the universal knowledge, and that's what hacks it. Meaning that when they say, well, the energy coming from your finger is, and then they give it a name, now it's been hacked. Because how we worked was that when we wanted to send the energy from our finger, it was just a thought. So that's what we're talking about. What's going on in between the thought is where the hack takes place. And this is how you could open yourself into a free-flowing Zen system, a system that actually allows you to continuously flow in a zone, but not the zone that the choking guys and the darker forces are in, because they're also in another version of their zone too. It's almost like whatever the higher forces can do, the dark forces know how to copy it, and it never comes out right. It's like a monkey's paw, but they have a version. So what they've been doing is they've been entertaining the youth and entertaining people with this. And then what it's been causing, now here's what I saw 2 days ago. I was thrown right into action in a dream. And I was given certain things, and things were so chaotic going on around that, for better lack of words, they didn't even have time to brief me. And I was basically inquiring what was going on, and they said, what's always been going on, they're stealing souls, meaning that throughout the universe, souls get trapped all the time. And there are factions that go after those souls, just as when a child gets kidnapped on this dimension, there's a whole group of people that mount up and say, well, we got to go find this child. So I mean to say again, for those who feel like now that it's not their responsibility to go out and to tell people about consciousness, and that they feel better when they don't tell people about consciousness, or whatever you're saying in your mind that's saying don't go tell people about consciousness, you just may be in one of those positions where one of those sides is a teeter-totter. But I tell you right now, man, you got to run back. You got to run back really fast and go and keep dropping the jewels, because what's happening is that at every single moment, different people are getting different triggers and different experiences that are changing wholly what they think and what they thought was going on, just like it happened to you. What happened to you is that at some point you realize that, this is not what's going on. So this is the year where many people realize that, and then sometimes still not having the proper processes of knowing how to destroy the ego, etc. The person doesn't feel like they want to be told, I told you so. Remember, don't do that to people. If they come to you, and especially now, and they act like they need help, don't be like, I see, man, I told you about this stuff all along. Don't make sure that you don't fail in that. That's just one of the things I want to say. Just make sure you always keep that door open for them to come to you and say, and when they say, hey man, you know what, I'm starting to realize that maybe some of the stuff that you were talking about is true. Keep that door open, because it's an energy. They know if when they ask you, you're going to say, I told you so. And so I just wanted to say that, Crystal. It's just very important, because there's an entirely different onslaught that's happening with humanity that's even out of the vision of many of us that are practicing at all times bringing positivity and bringing a lot of balance into this dimension. And just like what you're saying, if the girl is, you have to go to the people who are actually on the ground or ground zero and ask them, hey, what are you doing? What are you listening to? And then they show you it, and then you become aware of what's being done behind your back. A lot of people call themselves light workers. I think the term should be full spectrum now. Like there's more colors than white, and there's more colors than black. So the full spectrum worker has to make sure they shine light into that corner that has been kept dark, because there are people that are basically being abused in there. Like for those children to get into that now, and then what's happening in their psyche, there was a whole force that was designed to neutralize that. It was never something, it was all a part of our existence, contained this back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It contains that. And that's why I was saying in these notes that there's a vertical and a horizontal point in the cube. Now, I'll explain to you the secret really briefly about uppercase and lowercase letters. If you notice, the uppercase G is shaped like a yin, while the lowercase g is shaped like a yang. This is because there is a hidden knowledge that the upper and lower case of the English language shows that the uppercase is the more superior, while the lower case is its child. And then it shows you what the lowercase cannot do when it's still in the lowercase state. So with the letter L, if you notice, a L or a God can go vertical, a capital L, vertical and horizontal. A lowercase L can only go vertical, or a lowercase God can only go up and down. So the master takes the uppercase and the lowercase and meshes them both together and realizes, okay, I need to go up, down, and vertical. And that's how you grow into the next step. That knowledge right there is the key to many of these symbols, because English was a finishing of an entire symbolic system. So just remember, the uppercase becomes what the uppercase and the lowercase is what the uppercase can do and what the lowercase cannot do. And so I'm going to let you go ahead and continue, Crystal.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say too, there's definitely dark recesses out here on the dimension, that we haven't yet discovered. And from talking to my sister, I just couldn't believe what she was showing me. And with something like that having 39 million hits, that it's getting seen. So, we definitely need to search and destroy as people who are holding this beacon for younger people, and definitely be those way showers, and be living the path ourselves, and definitely just seeking out that darkness and abolishing it with what we know, because it's definitely working on a higher level than what you can see with your five senses. So how we look at everything on the resistance, and we'll take information and really mull it over. We need to really think of it on deeper levels, because they're definitely getting targeted, so to speak. But I was just going to mention something kind of funny too. She, at the end of our discussion, she talked about Jay-Z and Beyonce's new baby, and she's like, "Yeah, have you heard their new baby girl? What they named her?" I was like, "No. What did they decide to go with?" They're like, Blue Ivy, and I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "Yeah, it's apparently stands for Born Living Under Evil, Illuminati's very youngest." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then the anagram of that name actually translates to Lucifer's daughter in Latin. So I kind of had a good laugh at that. I mean, whether it's true or not, it doesn't really matter. I mean, like everything in the celebrity world, it's kind of there just to create, a ruckus and have people talking about it and distracted, basically. So I was also going to talk a little bit about the Madonna ritual, too, at the Super Bowl, but you definitely beat me to the punch there, and, of course, your analysis would be a lot better than mine. But, she definitely had quite the spa day, and I really do hope Oil Lay was taking some notes that day, now with fresher souls, sense. But, it was definitely interesting to watch, and I could tell, when I was watching it myself, too, especially when all the lights were coming up, I was like, oh, there's something definitely going on here. I can't wait to see what Sevan's got to say about it, because this really feels hyper-dimensional right now, and I looked over at Wes and Kennedy, and they were just, watching the TV, and I was like, oh, you guys realize, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's almost like I can't look away, and I was like, yeah, I know. And then I read, too, I wanted to get kind of Madonna's pre-game and post-game feelings on things, and she said at the interview before the show, she's like, I've got to deliver a pretty impactful sermon. I have 13 minutes to do that in, so it's got to be pretty impactful. And then someone had said, you have a twisted ankle or whatever. How are you is that gonna affect your show? And she's just like, no, some people call me a bit of a masochist, but a little bit of ibuprofen and, I should be good to go, or fresh souls, whatever, same difference. But, I had a bit of a laugh, and then at the end she said, she thought it was a really good feast for the eyes, and I was like, yeah, feast. funny you say that, but that's all I really had to say about the music part. We did put up a post this morning about that, so you can simply go to audacity.com, and we've labeled the instructions for you. You just open up a file and then click edit and select your music, and then go into this effect tab, and you can change the pitch and the frequency, so you can put all of your favorite music back into 432. And for those of us that do listen to a lot of music and have kind of a keen ear, I took music in high school, so I can definitely tell the difference. And we've also linked a few sites, too, that just give you more education on 432, and you can listen to the difference. And I listened to the difference, and it definitely, with 432, it's kind of more, I don't know, I feel just more connected. It's kind of harmonic. It just feels lighter on the ears. And then when you go to 440, it's very minimal, the difference, but you feel different. Your emotional state has changed. You do feel a little bit, foggy or confused. So, I encourage people to go and check that out. And
and also just to let them know, you can't throw Lil Wayne in there, so don't think that you can go and throw the bad music in there and you're going to make it good, just for just for those that are listening, oh man, maybe I can go and throw something else in there. But it's good to listen to a lot of the strings, and there's just so much stuff available on the torrent that you can just really get some good music. So there is a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of new harmonic stuff that allows your body to come into more, to better frequency and better tone, and I recommend that people start using that now, tone up those organs. Also, there's quite a bit of information available on colon cleansing, liver cleansing, and kidney cleansing on the internet. I think the colon cleanse is really the only one that you actually have to go and get some other type of product if you want to do it the real proper way. But as far as the kidney, and as far as cleansing the kidney and cleansing some of the other parts of the body, it's really important now to get into that information. Apple juice, grapefruit juice, Epsom salt, these are some of the ingredients that are only ingredients that are needed to clean out these organs. So I recommend that people start doing that in order to get themselves tuned up harmonically for this energy. If you're not feeling that the energy rising every solar and lunar cycle and stuff happening in your life that is more and more vividly showing you that something is going on. If you don't see that going on, then it's definitely an indicator that you're not fallible. So I'll say that again, that if you don't notice a continuous graduation every single cycle, mainly around the full moon, every time the full moon comes around, it's bringing more to your whole field of what you need to grow. If you don't see that happening, then it's an indicator that something is off track. And I know that now 100%. It's something that's very important for us, because remember, this year is when it's all going to take place. And so I guess getting right into that, I know that we're going to let Wes come on in a little bit. I guess we should probably get into the 3 days of darkness, since we only have about 20 more minutes left in the show. I wanted to go ahead and give people the clarity of what exactly that's about and what exactly that means. Did you want to say something before I started that, Crystal?
No, not at all. Will we have any time for a question or two, too?
Oh, for sure. Actually, I'm going to definitely give this. We got 24 minutes. It should take me a short period of time, but we're going to take calls after that. So whoever wants to call in, you can call in to area code 347-996-5688. That's 347-996-5688. You can press 1, or for those that are on the line, you can press 1, and then it gives us an indicator that you're on the line. And so we're going to go ahead and take some questions after this, and I'm just going to go ahead and get right into this 3 days of darkness now. What this is really about is, if you notice that there's already traditions, especially within the Catholic faith, about the 3 days of darkness that are already known in Espanol, meaning that if you are of Latin culture, then you understand the story about the 3 days of darkness from the story of Fatima. Now, this story is then brought forward into the Christian text as the 3 days of darkness of Jesus, which it took Jesus supposedly, we'll just call it the Christ. It took the Christ 3 days through the death, burial, the resurrection process. And what this is that the lower point of the actual horizon, or the sun on the horizon, takes place on the 22nd. And from that point, it's known as the lowest day of the sun. And then the next day, it stays in like a stasis point, and then the next day, it starts to rise again. Now, the 3 days of darkness is more associated, however, with the Passover, which was also 3 days that were logged within the Old Testament, and it talked about the firstborn children of Egypt being killed and by an angel, but if there was a certain mark on the door, then the angel of death would pass over, and this was also a 3-day period. So what you really come to terms with is understanding that, first of all, anytime you match something up with 3, you have to say that it is the mind, the body, and the soul. That there is going to be a process that takes place where the mind, the body, and the soul is going to go through a transfiguration. Now, many people think that this actual transfiguration is going to be visual. Now, there's enough visual things happening right now to see that obviously by the time we reach that point, it's not going to be something that happens right then. It's going to be something that was already taking place and just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So what would it really be if the world had to go through the resurrection process? And that's what we would be talking about here in this 3-day transformation. So what I can, like I said it before, request that people do is, first of all, understand that the stars in the sky are more like an explosion from the sun. When you look at the sky at night, it's just very difficult to explain this, but you have to see how these realities are put together. But when you look at the sky at night, because the reason why the sun is not there is because you're actually looking at everything that's inside of the sun. And that's why none of the planets are anywhere near the size of the sun. So the sun has exploded, for better lack of words, its chakra, or its 7 system, or prism spectrum, into everything. And then it draws it back in. And this is what you see in the daytime where the sun is in its radiance, but that's all the collection of all the soul force and energy radiating back out. So you're looking at a slow-mo version of the implosion and explosion of the sun every day. And that's why they say we die daily. So every single day you get up, you have an opportunity to start things all over again. So what happens for us here is that I will tell you that this reality that we're in is just a wavelength. The other side of this is called the astral plane. When people die, they go to the astral plane. Generally, if they're not very equipped there, and that had to be because they live their life not practicing frequency techniques, basically, then there pretty much goes on, what goes on for that person that does not have any control over themselves is very similar to what goes on here with a person who doesn't have any control of themselves. They go into another system that is designed and is controlled. If the person has decreased, meaning they have lost soul force, they go into a lower system because in retrospect, the lower systems are developed the batteries for the lower systems are developed in the higher systems when the higher system beings fall into lower states of consciousness. The higher systems function the energy sources, and this is why you can't bring a huge high energy being into this environment. It will rip the entire frequency. So you only have certain beings on certain frequencies that are here. So you can see if you move down frequencies, you then can make up worlds that are worse than Earth. So you would make up a piece of worlds that are worse than Earth. Now, here's another thing. It's already going on because we are multidimensional beings. We have several correspondences. We have a tree version, we have an insect version, we have a mammal version, we have a reptile version. So we have different versions of us, but they're all simultaneously sitting on the harmonic that we're on. And that's why across the musical scale, the harmonics, like for instance, with the 528 hertz, 235, but 205 hertz, I believe, is the harmonic for 528. So as you can see, the harmonic is lower, but they're still on the same resonance. This means it's on a lower plane, but it's still on the same level. And this is how you can understand how you work across multiple levels. So if a person falls off on this level, they also fall off on all their simultaneous levels. And that's why it's also so important to understand your multidimensional self and to understand how much that you are everything, because you realize that you have a lot more at stake for remaining asleep here. Now, again, this message is only coming to certain people. It's not coming to everyone. It's really coming to those that are responsible for continuously spreading it like a ripple effect to others that they meet just in what they call synchronicity. They meet in synchronicity and they pass the knowledge to them, and it keeps activating them, and then it spreads. But we still have to realize that there's an entire array of different kinds of beings here. When you find yourself at the stage of understanding your spiritual progress, this is a lofty state. A person who considers their spiritual field energy and they're embarking into the multiverse is not a regular being from the sense that they've only been around one or two times. They've actually been around multiple times, enough to see that there is higher levels that can be reached. It takes a long time for a person to come and reason. So we have about 17 minutes left in the call, and just to make sure that we do cover all of our questions here, we're going to go ahead and take the first caller. It's area code 469. Caller, you are on the air with the Universal Current and also the 2012 show.
Hi, Sevan. How you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well. Thank you.
Yes. This is Adele. I have a question, and I'm trying to see if it's relative to what we're talking about. And it has a lot to do with a dream I had, and it seemed like it's just right in line with it. But there was a lamp that was over this flower, like an ivy. It was green. It's a green vine ivy. And all of a sudden, at the very top, it starts smoking. And the smoke turned into a fire, and it started burning. But the plant was green. So my question is, does that have something to do with the Kundalini energy? Or what
it definitely can be interpreted that way, because as we see on that tarot card that was posted, the Fortitude card, that there's a high connection to vines and the Kundalini energy in regards to being able to ground you properly. Like the thing is that people have to understand we spread out like we continuously spread out almost like tentacles. Even the light rays themselves are what they call the spirit, because they move in straight lines, but it never really is, even after you can't see it. So there's definitely a connection between the ground and between the light, and they find their balance. They do find their balance within each other somewhere, but it's just so advanced, even what we're talking about, because we're talking about something that's already been put together as opposites to work in harmony. And I think when we do examine that a little bit deeper, we find that even though we can't understand it, it works. But this won't be the first time that we understand. This won't be the first time we have a trouble understanding something. Like this one is the one that breaks my mind all the time. Is that in our knowledge, we know that everything comes from somewhere. But there's everything about our existence that tells us that something has to start from somewhere. So if it has to start from somewhere, then how did we get here?
That's true.
Reality shows us right away that it has another level of knowledge that we don't even have access to, just in understanding what it really means to start from nothing.
Right.
But
exactly, I hear you.
Look at this. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it exists. We're the proof of it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and we're the proof of that. So now that we know it exists, this means that we can make things come out of nowhere. This is the knowledge that it's like very simple, but it's the most powerful, because it means for one to exist, the other one must exist. And then the person is not so fast to get rid of what they keep calling negative, because they will be actually erasing the evidence of where the positive would be. You see, especially in this world. This world is a shadow world. This is why we live in a state that is not completely us. It's a shadow or image, a reflection, a prism point, a spectrum piece of us. So because of that, if we erase it too fast, then we won't find a trail of where the real collective, what they call the 8-octave thing is. And this is what keeps happening reality after reality, where we dismiss all of the information right around the time where we really need to dissect it the most. And so right now we have all this information from people's collective dreams, information from the Illuminati, we have information from the they're doing all their stuff in open. So we get to see where it all goes and how it all actually works. And then we make our interpretation from there. Like when you can take the dream and you can interpret it really the way that you know is most harmonic for what you're experiencing in your life. And this is where it does take it takes your maturity, because like sometimes people find a resistance and the question is asked whether they're an initiate or a seeker or an adept. And they just put adept because the ego loves that. It's like, I'm adept. But the reality is that it would be a lot better if the person said that they were a seeker, because they could kind of receive more. So this is how our interpretation should work also. You should interpret it exactly to your next step of what you need to experience. And that instead of, going several steps high, or say the confusion between the cornerstone and the capstone, and then this allows you to benefit and get right into the next step of where your process is. So that's what it would mean to me, definitely, is that these two forces that we can't even see how they come together have come together and also show that they can even be perpetual. Where you see a tree burn, and I say maybe that's also the secret of the burning bush. It burns, but the bush doesn't burn up. So it's gone another level beyond what we can understand how that works, because generally when fire touches bushes, it burns up. But the reality, of course, is that if the bush, of course, contains a spirit, which is definitely noticeable on with certain levels of your chakras open, that spirit doesn't burn. So even the whole idea of fire, like on this planet, like they say, oh, you'll suffer hellfire. Well, the spirit doesn't burn, so how would that really be like a bad thing for the spirit? But it can be made to feel like that if you're a fleshly person and you're really material, because then, of course, the material will get consumed. But who you really are, and this is the most important thing that people always experience when they first have an out-of-body experience, is that they're able to go and even touch their body. And they see that it's even warm, and they realize at that point that they are not the body. And they realize that all their memory and all their knowledge is not contained in the body either. And so what this actually means is that the body is just a vehicle. It's like a car. Like all of your stuff is not contained in the car of who you are. It's just a vehicle. And so when we become the masters of these vehicles and we get more into just doing that, then we realize that, of course, the other stuff already existed. And that's really where it is. That's really where it is. So hopefully that gives a little bit more clarity on that. Do you have another question?
It really did.
I would like to add too that Adele, you can always keep like a tape recorder next to your bed or a journal for those times when you wake up in the morning and you've got a lot in your head and you've recalled most of it, but you want to remember it. Then you can simply just write it down right there with a pen and paper or on your tape recorder, and then you can see your dreams starting to maybe tell you something as they build upon each other every single night or every second night, whatever it is. But then you can kind of see maybe that your oversoul is trying to give you information, and then you can interpret it from there. I mean, dreams are really expansive. You can spend a lot of time learning how to properly interpret them. But yeah, that's the one thing I would recommend for you to do if you aren't already.
Yeah. But like I said, the only interesting thing is that, like I said, it was up under this lamp, and the lamp was like a white. The light was so bright it was white. But all of a sudden, there was smoke coming from nowhere, and it just caught on fire. It just started burning. But it was an ivy plant, and it was green. And usually, if you put something that already has water in it, a lot of times when you go to burn it, because of the water in it, it's not going to burn. But it was actually burning, but this was a live plant. It wasn't dead. And that was just a concern for me.
It's also been a lot of dreams of plants in the dreams world now, too. And, of course, the knowledge is that the plants do eventually evolve into what we are now. And there's a deep knowledge that the trees were here after the land masses formed. So the stones were kind of first, and then they were alive, and then the trees moved in, and then they were alive. And so these beings also, in certain tenses, have spent more time in this lesson. And the interesting part is if we notice that the trees and the stones have been here for a very, very long time. Of course, they make up the foundation of things. But in their level of consciousness, from how they're interacting on this dimension, it's actually less than ours. So how long has the human and what the actual soul inside a human, how long has that really been in existence? Yeah. And that's, I believe, like, maybe to give us a glimpse, we're always talking about the timelines and things like that, but the soul is like, you know, it has so many of these years that when we're seeing how long it takes to develop a galaxy, it has those years accompanied with how long it's been in this. And obviously it's in rehab right now because it probably has been worn out at a certain tense. And that's what we talked about before, about how to get older but not get worn out. You know, what's been going on with life. And that's why we were talking about in the beginning about this sexual energy has a lot to do with getting worn out. If you start to discard the masculine or discard the feminine by imagining it's the last person that you met and that's how men are, you have to look to the actual source of the masculine. Same thing with feminine. If you're looking at the last female that you met or the one on TV and you're saying that's how women are, then you're only really robbing yourself of the real energies that keep you alive and immortal, which are transcend what someone may be describing or even doing, especially when they're in a program reality. And so this is very important for us. Like, we don't want to cut off our system of support. These masculine and feminine energies are what make up the two energy systems of our body. But we can't imagine that it's Jay-Z, and that's the masculine. And that's also, look, this is a deep point because this has been happening, like, you can't imagine that the Catholic Church is the masculine. But that's what people have been doing. They say, well, that's the masculine solar brotherhood. No, that's not. That's the Grigori from the Klotho that are on the inverted tree of the Sephiroth. So there's other words to explain who they are. They're not masculine. When you put them in the masculine seat, this only serves to confuse you because the body, the subconscious mind says, wait a minute, so I thought we said one half of us was them then. So this means we got to cut off who that is, like it's a cancer. So this is where, like I said, when they run amok, like a bull in a china house, when they run amok the knowledge, everyone is using one term to explain certain things. And then when it finally starts to bleed into the real terms, meaning where the darker side of the Kaplo start to be called masculine, then they succeeded. Same thing is that when the dark witches' coven start to be called feminine, then they succeeded. Because what the feminine and masculine really is something entirely different. It's actually what has been keeping us alive. Very important. But okay, we have a couple more questions. There's about 5 more minutes left in the show, and some people did call in, so I'm going to go ahead and take those calls. But I do appreciate you calling in to the 2012 show and giving us that insight, and of course opened up a lot for us to talk about that I'm sure people can grow on.
Yes.
Take care, Adele.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take the next caller. It's from area code 571. Caller, you are on the 2012 show.
Hi, thank you. I'm just going to ask a question and then hang up and listen to your answer later in the recording because I got to go.
Okay.
But I am a musician, and I understand a lot about frequencies and so forth. I'm really on level with that. But the thing is, I started listening to heavy metal, death metal, that kind of stuff in about 5th grade. And later on, I found there is some, like, heavy metal that has, like, positive lyrics. Now, would that, because intuitively I would think that, you know, the blast beats, the heavy banging and all that stuff is bad, or not bad, but, you know, throws you off balance and so forth. But could positive lyrics kind of balance that out?
Well, let's first discuss again the frequency. The frequency takes place in the mastering. So what ends up happening is that regardless of what is actually being played, once it comes out through the mastering from, you know, what Crystal was explaining from what I've read on other sites, that it comes out with a 440 hertz, also known as the death tone or the dial tone. And this is also the dial tone of our phone is 440 hertz. So it is possible that running such sounds through that kind of process would make it harmonic or get you off of the frequency lot, because let us not say completely that rock music, because some people say, well, rock music is shown to break down the muscles. Okay. Well, doesn't anything that breaks down the muscles actually build the muscles? So we'll look deeper. What happens when a person listens to rock and then engages in some type of activity that they must be strong? They generally can be as strong as a rock. So I think what we're dealing with here is more specific than us just saying, you know, what the lyrics sound like and things of this nature, even though we know it definitely if they're going through the evocation like like Tool or something of this nature, or Ariataka and these type of songs, if they're going through those evocations, it's different, no matter what tone it's in. However, if there is a harmony that seems to harmonize with you, you may have been a rock and are working on the level of becoming the crystal, and this is cutting and shaping you in the way that you need to be. And that's what I'm saying, like everything in this reality is malleable, but we have to know what to change it into. So basically see how it makes you feel with the 440 or how it's being listened to now, and then make the adjustment to one of your tracks, because definitely me saying not to listen to it is not going to stop you from listening to it, but make the adjustment to it and see exactly how the music makes you feel then, and then I will blog about it and let us know what exactly took place.
Okay, so, all right.
Okay, you're still on. Okay, I thought you had hung up.
Yeah, I was, but then your answer was so interesting I had to stay on. But I guess that does answer part of it. But I guess what I was more getting at was like a lot of these metal is it's kind of, they use a lot of bass, you know, kind of just like pop music, just they use it in a different way. A lot of the slower frequency. So I was kind of under the impression that just that whole genre would just kind of hold you back in a slower frequency range, like, you know, hold you in anger or hatred, or I listen to it because it has a lot of energy. It gives me a lot of energy.
Music becomes a reference point, and what happens is that if the person logs certain reference points with their music, then it does bring them back into that reference point. But again, like it's one of those things that the doctor used to tell me, you don't want to get crazy about this, because what then you'll find yourself wanting to do something, and then you're telling yourself that you should not do that, and then they're actually becoming an internal conflict that is even greater than you just going and listening to the song that you say that you like. The best thing to do is keep searching for more. And with certain music, definitely, even certain artists, because such as Stain, even if they make a positive album, it still doesn't erase the negative vibration coming from their vocal system, which is also how they tap into individuals. It's where that frequency of that person, when you get used to hearing the voice of that individual, in that individual, everything that they're doing in their life after they made that song is still carrying through that person's frequency. So, yes, there is a large part of the music that is definitely destructive and definitely holds a person back. What we're looking at now is where is the bridge at? Like, where can it be where the person almost, it's like you don't quit cold turkey, where can the person start to back off of what they've been actually immersing themselves in that they know to be negative for themselves? And so that's what we're talking about. So if the frequency that is if the music is coming across and it's in certain things, and if it's conflictive, because let's say you're playing the metal on top of good lyrics, the reality is that people have learned to gain strength. Like if you look in nature, and I'll explain this from the level of nature instead of like trying to explain this from what's going on in the world. But if you look deeply into what's going on in nature, you'll see that certain things have adapted to eating and growing strong off of other things, meaning that in nature you'll find that certain animals can live off of just a certain plant, and that's it. And then other ones have adapted to eating off of something else, and they have gained nourishment and continue to grow. So what's happening here in our reality is that we have to become the final judge of what is causing us to grow. Like, because if someone switches from the negative rap over to positive R&B, you can still see how the person is still in a field where R&B is, going to still be counterproductive for the person, but not as counterproductive as them listening to rap. So this is where, again, these bridges are built to explain a person, not just like we're not humans. Like, you need to quit right away. But if the person could quit right away, then they would have already done it. But to find the solutions to making the transcendence beyond it. Because that's the other thing. If you've been listening to the same stuff forever, there's other stuff out here that's more advanced that can do more for you. So it means at times that you need to switch your idea of what music really is. And this is maybe the biggest thing that people need to understand, is that music now has become what they're interpreting it, just like masculine has become now the papacy. So look at music as these frequencies and these tones that are now being readily available to you, and then we request that people start to create their own music and start to change up music to see the new product. And that's what the responsibility of this generation really is that this stuff is not here. There's no homeschool curriculum for wholeness. So someone's got to write it. When they write it, it'll be the first time. So same thing with the music. There's no specified rock music that actually increases your level of frequency and power. It's not. There's nothing out there specified like that. So thus, if you figure out how to do it, you'll be the first one to do it. And guess what? The world loves first. So this is also where many of us find our connection with transcending what we've been doing normally on the dimension with, working for everyone else and doing things for other people. You transcend that by using this knowledge and this ability that you're getting across this network and that you're getting from these different portals of knowledge and bringing the first that humanity has seen of many things, because if you don't do it in the collective mind, someone else is going to do it anyway. So it's something that you can tap into. It makes you very intelligent, and it allows you the ability to do major things. Now it's just left up to you to actually do them. And I guess the last thing to say in this is that I was talking to Luis the other day, and we had a great conversation, and it came up that at times we will ask for the power and ask for the ability and say, well, if I just get the power, if I just get the ability, if I just get the money, then I'll actually do this. So higher forces, if you give it to me, then I'll actually do this. Never realizing that you have everything that you need to do it right there. And what you're doing is the same thing that you always do, which is looking for more reasons on why you need to do what you already know you can do anyway. There's people that trust you. There's people that listen to what you say, that have the resources to put across what you need to pull off. You need to go and talk to them. It's almost like if you really believe what's coming across this portal as far as knowledge and information and about the time that we're in, a person will be very aggressive at making sure they enter into the higher stages of this, because it's up to them. When people die, they generally die by themselves, meaning that even the person next to you may not die at the same time that you die. So this means that there's, just as you came in this world, there's a soul responsibility, because it's a soul. Soul means one. There's a soul responsibility for you to take care and graduate your soul beyond what everyone else is doing around you, especially music. Many of these things that I tell you now, some people don't have the strength to actually back away from it completely, so I'm giving you options. But the reality is that, man, when is it going to end? If you've been doing it for 10, 15 years, it should be boring by now, at least. And if it's not, that means you're under a program. But if you're listening to this message, this means you're already getting deprogrammed. So you're headed and speeding towards the knowledge and the information of what exactly you should be doing. And a lot of that has been conveyed on the line right now today with this message. So again, I just encourage people to use this intelligence to develop things for this reality for the first time that will change it. And you will find, because there's already been so much groundwork laid for you to come and do what you were supposed to do, that it'll be received and it'll allow you to transcend what you're doing now. And this also means a transcendence on all the other levels, the spectrums that you exist on. So all of them graduate too. So as we wait on the higher self at times, trust me, the lower self is waiting on us. So what we have to do is be the control point and the one to move up. And then that's what creates all subsequent experiences. So hopefully, again, that gets everything clear for you. I'm going to have to take another call. We're actually over a little bit, so I'm only going to take a brief second with these calls. Unless, Crystal, do you have anything to say to the gentleman about that music?
No, I think you pretty much hit it right on the head with that. I was also learning, too, that obviously all the music in the last 60 years has all been tuned to the 440, but anything prior to that will be in 432. I know classical music is a little bit, Stone Age for some people, other than the older generations, but, you should give it a shot. I mean, it's very relaxing to listen to. Just have it in the house whenever you're doing your chores or what have you, and you may find that it may be something that kind of grows on you. So that would be my only advice. Maybe give that a shot, too.
All right. Thank you both. I understand completely, and I will be the first to do that.
Excellent,
Yes.
man. You definitely keep me informed.
Indeed, yes, you do.
I shall. Wholeness.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, caller from the 512 area code. You're on the 2012 show.
How's it going today, guys?
A good day. Good day.
Fantastic.
I got a couple questions for you, man. I feel like I just kind of hit a brick wall here in the last few months, but I'm having an issue with water. I've been drinking pretty good water. I've been drinking 9.5 alkaline water, but I can't drink water. It's the biggest struggle I can do to drink any water. I've just kind of I've been drinking maybe for 2 or 3 glasses a day. I was drinking a gallon a day, and when I saw you were talking about the salt, the cell salts, it seems in what's going on with me forever is there would be something inside me like a switch would flip, and I'd be having like I don't know how to explain it. I've also been a professional musician all my life. It seems as if that my mood could change over this actual switch flipping in me in some way. And I've always felt that I've had some kind of chemical imbalance. And I'm wondering if the salt thing, it kind of spurred my ideas that maybe that's what you're talking about.
For sure. I mean, just to give just a brief background on the cell salts, that basically in Germany, if people really want to look to some of the highest levels of information that have been passed about the body, especially in regards to physics and things of this nature, you definitely can see the Germans have accumulated quite a bit of that knowledge. In their country, generally, they do not have hospitals. Even when they treat fractures and things of this nature, they tend to use only the cell salts. There's also 4 books that are on that post that are free. I did actually link that post in the chat room, but there are 4 books there, and you can read through those books. They're very short, but they explain in detail exactly what the biochemical cell salts do and how they work in your body, because there's only 12 cell salts when you break down the cell of a human body. When you burn the cell of a human body to ash, there's only 12 salts that are extracted from it, proving that the body is only really constructed of these salts. And so when they uncompressed the knowledge, it basically showed that these salts were also seasonal, and that seasonal salts. And it sounds like our seasoning for the kitchen. But these salts were also seasonal, and this is what caused certain shifts within the body and becoming deficient on these salts, and then losing the reference point of what it's like to have those salts. And realistically, the body is the real alchemist. It can take the junk that we eat every day and the garbage air that we breathe and convert it back into life. So at times, it's missing certain things that it can't get anywhere else. Like we talked about cobalt. It can't get the cobalt anywhere, so if it does happen to get some, it'll store it for 9 years just to make sure it doesn't become deficient on cobalt, because if that happens, then you basically go suicidal right away. So what happens is that the biochemical cell salts put back the core of what the body needs to remain in the best state that it can for this interim. Like, it's just always been something that is known, but they're cheap. It's like, there's a kit. We sell the kit for, I believe it's $77. You get 12 bottles, and each is 100 pills. And in each bottle, you get the information about which one to use, and it's a travel kit, so you can keep it with you at all times to keep your pH balanced. But I noticed that I personally, Luis had bought some down here, because things are hard to get in Costa Rica like this anyway, because they look a little strange. So, but they were bought down here, and I got a chance to use them, and I was so amazed at just how one could completely change how you feel, and especially for a person that's very sensitive to their body. And I started to want to get into more of mixing different ones together to get a perfect alchemy for my body to keep it at a premium state. To, like, if I'm going to sleep, give me more clear sleep. If I'm during the day, give me more energy. And 100% that is possible with the biochemical salts, because you can tell how the body fluctuates when it has certain ones, especially the one that you're deficient on. So I would definitely give that a shot, and I'm sure Crystal may have something to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I know drinking water consistently can get a little bit boring eventually, but, you can do things like adding fresh lemon to it, and that's actually really cleansing for your body. If you can just get in the habit of having a nice, big glass of tepid water right beside your bed in the morning and, have a little bit of sips with that with your morning routine, and then, maybe make your way to the kitchen and cut up some fresh lemon and put it in there. It can make it a little more palatable for you. And you can also add juice, too, really good quality juice, or I don't know if you have a juicer or not, that would be ideal, but even if you don't, just adding, the best juice you can to the water to just maybe dilute it a little bit, and maybe that'll be a little bit easier for you.
Thanks, guys. Everything you talked about is on that. You sent the link on the chat for the cell salts.
It's actually
that's all on the link.
Top header of the page there is under I believe that's the products tab there. Is the first one is the biochemical cell salts, and there's quite a bit of information there to read on it. So there's a lot of research that's already been done on it. And like I said, those books are first rate at giving the explanation of what they are and what they do.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to get the cell salts as soon as possible.
Okay, great. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, sir, we have one more caller that is called in from. Are you fine, sir? Is that all you needed?
Well, I just wanted to add the music. Being a musician all my life, the last guy, we're so into the sound and the words. I realize what you guys are talking about. The words and the sound have something to do with it, but we're talking about energy here. We're talking about frequency. So, the appearance of things may not be as they really are,
Especially when you're dealing with frequency anyway, because I've really started understanding frequency is way more vast than I even expected with just getting the GB4000, and it's, of course, a lab-grade frequency generator, and it goes all the way up to 20 million hertz, and it contains some vortex and printing plates, etc. But I also started noticing other settings such as gating, duty cycles, of course, square wave and thin wave, and so, but all these different specifications give you the actual patterns that you're working with, or in this case, the core energies that you're working with. So one of the things I've been working with is the Shabadni plate, and actually there's a really nice Shabadni plate available that I'm trying to secure now. It's only $300. It's put together by a scientific organization, and it's a smaller one, but you can see the patterns within the sounds. However, generally, these type of devices don't have an actual frequency reader. So you never find a device that it's telling you what frequency is being played and then showing you the shape. And just recently, we worked with the Cymatic software, but there were still bugs within the Cymatic software. It was a good try, but it was still too many bugs in it to give you actual specific to this is the sound that's being played, and this is what it looks like. Now, when is the last time someone, again, these are programmers are everywhere, if you could have a device that it'd be just like what the Tonoscope software was about, but you could plug in your music, and then you can watch your music, then this would be the only thing that I would know that could give you a sure indicator that what you're actually taking in is going to be harmonic for you. Because it couldn't be told by the ears, for most people anyway, because the ear is not tuned properly. Only the people that use those angel tuners or tuning forks and really get their ears back into the proper spectrum of listening can really get deep into what the sound is actually doing. It's almost like your chakra have to be open too, because they are the real organs. And I always talked about this. Developing an instrument that when you played it, it was like you were playing the person's body, to where it was tuned so perfectly from the chakra system and the solfeggio, the perfect solfeggio, that you would basically be playing a real person. So when they heard your music, they would feel the full sensation of what exactly you were expressing with your tone. And this is because, of course, the ears have taken an extreme amount of damage. Like I've done the surface reading on ears, and just how we experience so many sounds every day that just totally dole out the higher frequencies for us. So this is something that we're dealing with, but like I said, I lean on the intelligence of humanity now even now they're at stage of development. You have programmers that understand how to work this stuff in code, developing things like that will give us the insight, because we have to be specific about what we want now, but that gives us the insight to what we are really listening to, because then once that happens, it not only can be reverse engineered, it also can be a tool utilized to give us the images that we're looking for to get us into the harmonics that we want to seek without extra drag.
The funny thing, I was watching a movie about Jimi Hendrix last night. And Jimi Hendrix seemed to be a very mellow guy, didn't really do drugs much or anything. But he'd be in conversation with people, and they couldn't get his attention. And he was listening. he was hearing something. He was putting that together as he was in these conversations. I believe it's about the same thing. I don't know where that originated, from himself or what, but it's the same thing we're talking about here.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about the third ear. I mean, many people have always talked about the third eye, but the third ear is always active. There's a holophonic ear that we have that when a person has access to it or has turned it on for one moment, which generally sometimes happens really early in the morning when things are quiet and the faculty, if they have it, is open, they hear this orchestra or this song of basically the spheres. And you could never... Well, I couldn't say you could never, but it's so complex that it's so difficult you would have to be a true musician to be able to transcribe it back from there to here. But it's highly possible that many of these individuals have been tapped into that, or at least tapped into the music of their frequency. This is another thing, because some of the lyrics that come out are not necessarily what we would call totally harmonic with the idea of what we would want to experience in a higher state of consciousness, but still sounds good. And so we see that when we plug our ears, there is a frequency there. There is a ringing there. But what we'll notice is with the holophonic ear, that ringing, you then almost zoom into the ringing and are able to pull apart the waves that are making up that solid ring and space them out to the point where it actually becomes a song. Very interesting stuff.
One more thing real quick. I don't know if you have heard about, it's all over YouTube. I haven't heard the sound, but even in the middle of the country and all over, they had it in the middle of a baseball game the other day, that these very loud, eerie sounds are coming from nobody's figured out where. But if you go to YouTube and listen to some of these, it's kind of bizarre. They're all similar. It has a metallic sound to it, and then there's kind of bells and birds in the background. Have you heard what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the hum. Now, the bells and the birds must be the next level of the orchestra. But the official information is that, of course, the planet's frequency is raising on its own also. And then everyone supposed to that hasn't taken the initiative will follow in suit. And what we're actually hearing is the raising of the frequency of Earth. And, of course, it would be audible with such a large planet. So even in one altered state of consciousness, when hitting a really high frequency through vibration, at that point, I was made to know that there is a heartbeat of Earth, that because it's been going on so long, we've tuned it out. And it's very similar to if you're in a house and the refrigerator is making a noise, but after a while, you tune it out. So the frequency of the Earth has been tuned out, but as that frequency raises itself, the tuned out is going to start, basically it's going to come out of the tune out. And then the person is going to start to hear these noises, but they also should be feeling the accompanying energy. But of course, the first energy that most people feel with such things is fear. So, but that's definitely what's been happening, is that low Schumann resonance, like even the person that deals with frequency, for the Earth's frequency to be at 7 to 13 hertz, I mean, come on. I mean, like I said, the machine over here goes to 20 million hertz. So what's really going on here? What's happening is this version, this 5% phase lock of Earth that we're experiencing is about 7 to 15 hertz. When we get the entire spectrum, which is almost, 10 times what we generally are experiencing now. This means the Earth should be 10 times more active and more, basically the consistency of Earth would be 10 times as thick. 10 times more things to do, basically no levels of sleep. There would be no time spaces, no time for sleep. So this is the thing that, these are facts. This is not something that, a person can hope and wish and pray on. Like, it's going to happen. And the best thing that we can do is just, like I said, keep our body harmonic and keep this information coming in, keep the feminine force coming in, tap into the nature, keep the ground going on, because trust me, you'll fly right off. Keep your ground established properly and just get ready for something that we thought was a dream or something that was just a figment of someone else's imagination. But we're actually going to be inside of it. And this is the most interesting time.
Well, I got one more thing. I don't want to hog it. You're beautiful. I have another question. My eyes, I've really had some eye issues for about the last 2 years, and sometimes it looks as if I'm looking through a veil. I mean, my eyesight fluctuates. I can read perfectly 1 minute, and the next minute I really can't focus on anything. Any comments on that?
Yeah, like generally there's a film that starts to build up around the eye, and even if you can't see that film, you'll kind of notice there's a shimmer. Like if you shine the light, you'll see a different kind of shimmer come off your eye. When you read those books on the cell salts, you'll see that is one of the main things that is targeted. Because you notice there has been a huge effort, because they say 70% of the people that are blind could actually be cured of blindness. But many people are going blind rapidly because of the amount of calcium that's inside of the water and the chemicals. Because our eye is like a wet thing, always exposed to all these chemicals flying in it all day. So after a while, there starts to become like even when we blink, everything's like a little ball, so it becomes abrasive to the top of our eye. So what happens is with things like hair, nails, that type of part of the eye, that's all cell salts that actually build those and reduce. Well, in certain areas it will build certain things, and then in other areas it will dissolve certain things. So I definitely would check that out. I will also check out humusine, just to see. I mean, it just came across my mind while you were mentioning that, but just research it. But there's a product called humusine that actually removes calcium deposits in places that are improper. I've been exploring it for pineal gland uses, but I haven't seen it really work out for as much as cola. But I have a suspicion that it works on glands, it works on other glands. And because there's supposed to also be a magical property attached to it. And it was kind of some of the last information that Drumbolo dropped off before he, I guess, went underground in Peru. So I would just check it out and see and read about it and see what it really contains. So we got, hopefully the...
How do you spell it?
Say that again?
How do you spell that?
It's Humicin, humusine.
Gotcha. I'm glad I found you. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, no problem. So we're going to go ahead and get to that next caller, sir. I do thank you again for calling in. And caller... Oops, kind of cut him off a little bit, but I know he definitely got his full share. There's another caller here from area code 813. Caller, you're going to be the last call that we take today. Thank you for calling into the 2012 show.
Hey, Sevan, how's it going? My name is Steven, actually.
I'm doing exceptionally well. Nice to meet you.
I just kind of have a question about being in a stagnant position. Because I've been, trying to sift through a lot of knowledge, and I just feel like I'm kind of stuck,
Yeah, man, the easiest way if you feel stuck and you feel mentally blocked and then you see your dreams are like nothing there, the best thing to do is to make the brute force movement. Meaning that there is multiple ways to work with the situation that we're dealing with. As you see, some move from under the microscope, meaning that when they want to affect the environment at large, they go to the microscopic level to do it. They don't attack the environment. So the reality is that if we experience any type of stagnancy and we can't move it spiritually and mentally, then we're only left with to move it physically. This actually means physically relocating into another constellation, meaning that you know that the whole Earth is lined up from a constellational level, and where you're actually positioned is a particular system. And in that system, that may be what's keeping you stagnant. So if you can figure out the means of being able to move out of that system, even if it takes you to bungee, what you'll experience is the full brunt of everything that's been stored up that hasn't been allowed into that system. Different systems are more like customs. This is why I can't even get into the United States right now, because the reality is my energy level is so high, there's a movement basically to keep me from going into areas that are not ready for high levels of energy. So It's the same thing. If I'm trying to transport high levels of energy into your reality, but customs have stopped me, then that means that there's no high energy allowed in there. This is what happens. So if you actually happen to be experiencing an environment that has a high level of energy blockage, and you can also make note of that and you see that going on, this could be more than likely the situation that you're experiencing. And also, what I'm going to do, because I want to go ahead and give Crystal an opportunity to also chime in on that. But does that make any sense to you, or is that something that you've already tried?
No doubt. I've actually you're talking about more like a physical move to get away from where I'm at physically. So
yeah, I mean,
where I'm at
if you've already worked on it mentally, and you have like a lot of books. The books are building your knowledge. You're ready to do it, but something's not happening. You're looking in the dream world. You can't see really anything. It's cloudy. And then you just feel like that there's a stagnant from the mental and spiritual standpoint. You got to go brute force. Sometimes going brute force just equals yoga. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to completely relocate. There's other ways to do it. You can also bend and break the energy through, meaning that this is like the force. You force your body into the position that it needs to be in to receive what it needs to be received. So this is working on another level. So you see what I mean? There's other ways, but this time, if you've been stumped on the spiritual and stumped on the mental, you're going to have to go physical, and then you'll break through, and then the energy will free up in the other areas.
So to try to get myself into more like working out, getting myself like pushing to the limit. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, mainly a system because, pushing to the limit sometimes requires only once a week, meaning that if you decide you're going to go out and you're going to go hiking that day, then you think it's only one day. But the main thing here is consistency and repetition with anything you're going to do with the physical body because it's dense. It has to be exercise, like an exorcism. So what happens is that it's almost like you got to get it on some type of regimen or curriculum. It's good to do that with the yoga. There's other more aggressive forms of yoga. We have one here. It's called hot yoga, I believe, but it's basically like the room is hotter, and so the yoga is challenging. It's not like I thought the yoga was for the little nice looking women at times, and when I got in there, I got showed up. Like I was just like in there, I was a mess. And then as I got into it more, I started to understand how it was allowing me to reduce my levels of hatred, fear, etc. This was a while ago. So, but yeah, I would definitely work with something like that because it has its spiritual benefits. Now, this is the other thing. You'll notice that some people will be like Yoga Master and won't have anything going on a spiritual level. And so yoga is not the end-all, finish-all to getting spiritual. You need all these things to work in conjunction with one another. And so this sounds like, though, what you may be doing a lot of brain work, a lot of spirit work, and need to do some physical work on the vehicle because they want you to be able to run the gauntlet.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too, Sevan, when you were saying that, because, yeah, it just sounds to me like you've just built up enough energy in other ways, and you need to kind of cycle that physical energy. I mean, if you can get out in nature, too, and, go for the run, it's like the regiment video that we have on the Resistance website there, if you haven't already perused that, but, being physical outside and connecting with nature as you're letting go of that energy, the Universal Mother will, in turn, give you energy back, right? So then you've increased your cycling of your energy in every sense of the word. So try to do it outside if you can, and connect with it that way. That'll definitely give you what you need.
Yeah, I've definitely been experiencing through listening to you guys. I've definitely felt like an urge just to get in touch with nature. I'll even sit in my house and just look at the trees just because I want to be. I'm in Florida, you know what I'm saying? It's warm. I can go out at any time, but I just have an urge to get in touch with nature. Y'all have been urging me to work out more and stuff like that, and it's like, it's also my family. And my friends, I want to be able to, on a different note, I want to be able to, like, lift them up, you know what I'm saying? I have such a desire to, and for the past few years, even, I'm only 20 years old, but for the past years, like, since I was 16, 17, I've been, like, into deep knowledge and through actually hip-hop music, not so much rap music on the radio, but more or less hip-hop, which is more of an underground thing, and it's like, I don't know, we distinguish between hip-hop and rap is rap being the bad side and hip-hop being the good. And I've been taught a lot. I've been taught a lot just to bring knowledge back to the people, But now I feel like I'm not powerful enough. So
you got to work on that. Yeah, for sure. You just need to just work on that because, like Sevan had said earlier, he was talking about, now we've given you the information and the tools to do this. Now, what are you going to do with it? Use it. Use it to develop new ideas and new things to bring this reality back into wholeness, on your behalf of humanity. It's definitely very important. I mean, I have a lot of friends in their early 20s, too, and I find that most of them are really stepping up to the plate. There's definitely that urge and that want and need to do something. So you're definitely not in the minority, So good for you, and just keep on it, Absolutely.
For sure, and definitely know that we're here, we're anchor for you. You can email me directly on the resistance. I know definitely it feels at times that we're hitting a brick wall with things, but you got to use the same tools that are being used. And like I would encourage people like video, and putting videos together and really just keeping it specific to a particular topic, which I have a hard time doing. But, getting in that video and knowing how to target that video, seeing what's trending. Like if you go to Yahoo, you can see a trending column there, and then being able to take and explain to people what exactly is behind what's being presented is like the major way. Sometimes it's not your technique, it's your speed and how well you can impact. And that's really what's happening sometimes. It's like, or sometimes it's not so much as the speed is the technique. Sometimes it's not the speed is the technique, etc. So I would just work with utilizing some of these hyper communication levels of stuff that we have rather than going brute force. Because it's almost like when we talk, it speaks somewhat of the level of our system and what our system is in. Because also you may be needing to work on the internal cleansing. Because that's also where the physical thing comes into it also. It's like that's why there's a bridge to the mental, spiritual, and physical world. And you can see those bridges within the body because when you start working on your diet, it doesn't just work on physical, it works on spiritual and mental, showing you that what you eat is definitely universal. It's something about every single part of your body can benefit or could be disadvantaged by it. And so this is where that takes you to go in and take this information that has been given thus far and almost analyze your body. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll put another post together of from the head to the foot, how you can analyze what is going on with your spiritual state based on what you're experiencing. I think that would be a good idea. What do you think, Crystal?
Oh, yes, I'm still here. Definitely, yeah, that would be really great. We can definitely work on getting something like that together and putting it up on the site just to help people out a little bit more.
Yeah, how to identify those three bodies and see exactly which one may be needing some repair and what kind of repair to give to it. But yeah, like if you're definitely experiencing that, I would work also with your diet. Like your diet is really key. And there's some things like you have your core meals like your garbanzo and your couscous and these kind of core things that you can prepare yourself. That way you always have something to dip into when you get hungry versus being forced to go and, get some fast food or eat something that is made on the fly but is not going to be really good for you. So you definitely want to look into that. Look into your food intake and also look into how much you're getting out into the ground because by the last thing I wanted to say here before we get off the line is the body is very similar to a plant. It needs sunlight and it needs complete darkness. And it's important that when you sleep, that you sleep in complete darkness. And it's important that when you go out and you get some sunlight because also you'll even notice that if a person stops getting sunlight, their hair gets thinner, they may go bald, their fingernails get thinner. It shows you there's a lot that actually fails with the body when it doesn't get proper sunlight. But likewise, you can't fall asleep and even remember your dream at times unless you're submerged in complete darkness. So when you do have that complete darkness and then you wake up, you really feel like you've actually got some sleep because you got to also realize that many of these spectrums of light affecting you while you're asleep is not a good thing, especially now that we're learning that light is sound, is frequency, is shape, etc. That the LED, they were showing that the ray coming from an LED shoots at least 4 or 5 apartments over at times because of the light that the LED light can penetrate through many different walls, etc. So this is in your room. You should basically keep your room as an area where it can go into complete darkness when you're ready to go to sleep. So and then also your directional. Remember the old post about the direction of your bed. If you're getting not much activity in the dream world especially if your bed is positioned in front of the door, like basically the door is right there, right at your feet. You need to move your bed. I'm not going to tell you what direction to move it into or anything of that nature, but try moving and changing up things, basically, is the whole gist of what I'm saying. Change up some things around you if you're not getting the experience that you need because something's blocking it. And then you'll know instantly when you moved it because you'll feel the rush of energy as the block or the dam has been removed.
I would also like to add, too, for those of us who live in those cooler climates, like where I am, I definitely experienced about, 5 months of cooler weather, so we don't get the proper sunshine like Sevan was saying. So you can always take a vitamin D supplement to counteract that, and I've found that works really well, especially, for people whose moods are generally very affected by the cooler weather as well. They get that kind of seasonal depression, as I call it. But taking that vitamin D really counteracts that, so that's just something to think about as well.
Is it like a vitamin D extract, or is it like should I find some type of organic vitamin D? Or
no, it comes. You can get it usually you can get it in in kind of like a gel tablet form. Those are the ones that I use, and then there's probably other ones as well. But it just says vitamin D, and that should be good for you.
You said something about garbanzo beans, and lately I've been craving falafel and anything with garbanzo beans. I've been going every night, almost every other night, and getting some type of garbanzo beans. I even got some falafel mix right here. I was wondering I don't know what's urging me to do it, but I just kept having cravings to say.
Well, follow that, because your body's trying to tell you what you need. Our body is intrinsically intelligent, right? So follow those intuitions that you have. Maybe your oversoul is even trying to tell you what you need to get yourself to that level to be that way shower. So definitely don't dismiss that. Follow that with all your intention, for sure. Good luck.
I appreciate it. Also, I have this weird type of cauliflower I found at the organic store.
Oh, the spiral cauliflower?
So a Romanesco, I think that's what it is, Romanesco cauliflower. And it just looks like some type of frequency. It absolutely looks alien almost.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. It's green, right? And it's got little cone shapes. It looks like fractals almost. Yeah.
I was wondering about it. I have had it in my house for the past 2 days, and I don't want to eat it because I wanted to ask you guys about it. And
they actually have
it right now. It's absolutely wild. It looks alien.
Yeah, they actually have quite a few of them here in Costa Rica because it's actually a crossbreed between a broccoli and a cauliflower, actually. And I've ate it, and it didn't, one way or another, it didn't cause any major spiritual advancement, if that's what you're asking, but I didn't see it as something that was positive or negative for the body. I didn't notice any specific change in the body, even from a negative level, okay, this is obviously a hybrid, so it may affect me. But they always do say to keep with as much as natural foods that are indigenous to the environment as possible. However, it's definitely not something that's going to be going to throw you off, or it doesn't. I can't say it won't turn you on. Maybe it may do some spiraling through your DNA, but I found it very interesting. So how it was shaped like that. It was one of the first things I went after when I hit the organic market, or just the regular, actually the street market here in Costa Rica, and I saw it, and I was like, oh my goodness, this has got to be the thing. It's got to be the Japanese plant.
Right.
And that's actually, I went through the whole thing. I got it home, and I chopped it up the proper way, and then, I steamed it, and then I ate it, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. All right, so
I didn't think it was. I'm totally against crossbred fruits though. Like the grapefruits, I get grapefruits sometimes. I'll accidentally pick one up when I go to get some oranges. I just won't eat them. I can't. I don't know, the crossbreeding thing. As far as Yakub or whatever, and us being white people of non-melanin descent or recessive rather, they're crossbred or they're grasped. So that's what the 5% Nation of Gods and Earth teaches. So I've always been away from crossbred anything, so I don't think I'm going to eat it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't say that the melanin recessive people are crossbreeds. I think that's definitely the mix between a melanin recessive and a melanin dominant is a crossbreed. But it appears that from the constellational level that there is an actual, especially from the constellation of Russia and the Khazar Mountains, there's an actual constellation that corresponds to that. And it appears that that is the constellation of the melanin recessive because they're not positioned around a sun that glows like this one, even though the sun from that system is actually larger than the one on this system. So I think, the 5%, may have been using the 5% of their brain when they said that. So it's just, we got to keep this kind of stuff in balance, especially with just revealing exactly what's going on. But it does look like that there is two different breeds. However, the blood appears to be the same color, even when it's not oxygenated. So, I think that, we just have to bring more clarity to these kind of statements about what's going on in the constellation. Now, as far as hybrid foods, we'll find a lot of them. Beans are a hybrid. Of course, that little, that cauliflower thingy you have in the refrigerator is a hybrid. And many of the other fruits and vegetables have been hybridized, like especially the carrot, because the original carrot is white. You'll see some of those here every now and then, but they prefer the orange-colored carrot. So pretty much most of the food is a hybrid. You'll find that even the apples are very durable because of their hybridization. I think that ultimately, like the situation with the Tibetans when they came into the United States, the first place they asked to go was McDonald's. And then everyone was looking at them like, wait a minute, you guys are supposed to be the most spiritual people. Why are you eating McDonald's? And one of the Rinpoches enlightened the tour guide that anything they eat, they can move through their body so fast because they have control of all their organs. So it's, again, just about the mastery level of the body and even the mastery level of the mind and the spirit to exactly allows us to interpret or digest things that we've been experiencing. So we do have one more caller that I'm going to go ahead and take. Hopefully, brother, that got all your questions answered. And,
yeah, pretty much. If not, I'll definitely be in contact with you guys in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
come
great.
join us on the Skype chat on Wednesday if you want. Really informative. You'll really get a boost
For
from
sure.
that.
I just heard about that. I might have to tune in. I don't have my laptop yet, but when I get my MacBook back, I'll see what I can do for Wednesday.
Look forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Steven.
All right, I appreciate you guys. Also, I wanted to say, you guys said something about brute force, and I actually used to tag in graffiti force. Like, that used to be like my name or how I affiliated myself with. So
you're the one that wrote all of that.
I appreciate it.
No, I'm joking. You've been writing all on the property now.
yeah, I definitely got in some trouble with the law, so I'm done with that. But that force is still in me to actually.
All right, force. Well, hopefully we've given you definitely enough of the knowledge to use that force to actually emancipate many of the individuals that are counting on you.
Well,
so we're going to go ahead and take the caller from the 757 area code. Caller, you're going to be the last caller that we take today. We're actually running over just a little bit, so we want to put this in the archive as fast as possible. You're on live on air with the 2012 show.
Hey, peace and blessing. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
For sure.
Okay, yeah. I've been on y'all website, and I've been following you for a minute, man, and very highly intelligent staff of people you're dealing with, and I appreciate that knowledge. My question, and I've been listening for the whole hour and 30 minutes, and I think y'all touched upon it earlier about the preservation of the semen, and I think the other young lady was talking about the orgasm in a woman, and how from the female and the male organ and the preservation of this, how does it increase the kundalini?
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if you actually caught the first part of that show, but I'll definitely reiterate it one more time really briefly. But basically, first of all, the relationship between the male and the female being completely harmonic, meaning that the male is not using the female for the gratification of the sex, and the female is not using the male for actually the same reason or possibly finances, who knows. So as long as there's a harmonic relationship between the male and the female, when the sexual union begins, and then the male begins to feel like, as it talks about in the Montauk Chai orgasmic man, as the man begins to feel like he's about to orgasm, he then tightens his sphincter muscle, which is actually the muscle that is used to tighten your anus. This muscle is shown in the Montauk Chai book on how to actually work out that muscle. And so you can refer to the book exactly on how to do that. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to close the valve that actually makes your semen come through the penis and out of the tip of the penis. And it closes that valve, thus forcing the fluid up the spine, which there's an actual channel that leads up our spine on that same tube. So when the male feels like he's about to orgasm, but he's got the control of the sphincter muscle, the fluid then begins to rise up, and he experiences a higher level of his auric field because he's moved into basically another chakra. So the female also in conjunction, because the man is, of course, he becomes more attractive. His magnetic force increases as the more he holds his semen and is able to cycle it up. Just holding your semen doesn't do as much as increasing for your magnetic field, but when it begins to raise up and even circulate in between the chakras that it has already raised up to, then it increases the magnetic field. This does give the woman more of an attraction to the male and allows her to go into an orgasmic state multiple times also. And this energy being pushed off of the female into the male by the connection of their torso, or also what's seen as in certain Kama Sutra positions, but that energy bouncing back and forth ends up taking the two into basically a perpetual energy generation. Then at the peak of it, the two actually come out of the physical vehicle and spiral themselves up into the higher energy planes, completely imbalanced because the male and female is originally an androgynous being. Does that make sense?
No, definitely.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
You can also check out that book that Montauk Chai gives you everything. They say the guy, he makes a joke and he said, just the button. There's a button between because of course you can't do this right away, or maybe you can, but the reality is if you don't have a strong sphincter muscle, it's a process. So what happens is that there's a button positioned between the lower area of the scrotum and the anus that can be pushed up. So in the event that the male makes a mistake and starts to orgasm, if he catches it fast enough, he can push that area up and it will manually close the valve. And then this is, this is the beginning. But that's in the book. So he calls that the $1 million point. He says that there was, back in the day when we were really, really about space sparring and sparring and going through the interverse, etc., that a yogi may charge you $1 million of what it would be the equivalent of $1 million then to show you where that was, because much of man's existence hinges on a couple points. I think most of our existence entirely hinges on a couple points, and if you don't have those points or understand those points, then you almost don't exist. And this is the state that one can live in of like a slumber or a sleep where they don't even understand their full potential yet. So this is what we're talking about.
I appreciate it. I got one small mundane question, man. Small question. I heard you say earlier that just a few seconds ago, you said that your frequency level, your vibrationary energy is so heavy and so magnetic that the United States and probably other countries that's aware of this want to keep you away in order for you not to magnetically pull a lot of other energies towards you. And I know you're probably just one of thousands of others that are tucked away in islands and areas, preserving your energy. But let's just say for those that's in America that might also be able to resonate on high frequency that's off the radar. You know what I'm saying? You having a website and doing this communication, it kind of puts you on the radar. And I'm pretty sure there's people listening to you on the radar. But for those that's in America that's off the radar, what do you see for them in the coming future that stand off the radar? I mean, do we need to come together? Do we need to join? I mean, the higher frequency people, we need to come to a consensus?
Well, that's happening anyway, because once the field continuously expands, it will eventually connect us in a more of like an oversoul level. The reality is that I wouldn't advise anyone to get it twisted. I actually got activated in the United States. But you could tell that over a process of that activation, first of all, there was a buffer field that I was aware of, almost like a detail. Detail is like a police detail of individuals making sure you don't come out of the buffer. They weren't disturbing you, but they were there to make sure that you didn't try to show everyone else, basically. But there was also an extent to that conversation to these beings, the ones who watch, and I'm not saying they're malevolent or benevolent, but the ones who watch, the conversations don't bother them, meaning that you could tell the person, I was just in there, I did this, and somebody started shaking, and then they won't stop shaking, and then boom, and you tell the person all this, and it won't cause any schisms. It's only when you're carrying so much energy, because apparently the next level of energy for us gives us the ability to read minds. So when you see a person, it's not even like you're trying to do it. is what's interesting about this level of vibration. You can't even really obtain it trying to do it. It has to be almost supposed to have happened for you to complete your mission. So what happens is that, but when you're not, so you're never trying to, I'm going to go read people's mind, and but you will notice the people you interact with, everyone that ends up coming into your field is harmonic to you. So this means that you bump into them for a reason. So you never doubt, especially when they initiate or engage first, that they haven't been sent to you because there's something major, mainly your experience, that you need to translate to them. And then your voice works also as the frequency, the sound, the shapes, the color, etc. And it hits them and it adjusts their DNA. So this didn't seem to bother the watchers or whatever they were. It was only when you were displaying spiritual power. Now, then becomes a point where you cannot help but to display this power because you're still learning what it does. Then you get down, and then the glass will move forward a little bit because your heart feels so strong, it's moving physical objects. Now, this is a problem. So it appeared that once this kind of stuff started happening with my energy field, that immediately seemed like I knew I came to Costa Rica, but remember, it didn't seem to divulge, it didn't seem to divert my path. But what it did seem to do is to take me away from just that area that is dense. It's almost like it's a dual thing going on. One, you can't remain in that frequency anyway because it's not your frequency. So let's say that frequency is 300 hertz and you just jumped it up to 900. How long can you stay in 300 hertz anyway? So how it appears in this reality is that you start being moved away from it. So you can either look at that as they did it or you did it. The only thing that I could definitely 100% see was it was in the best interest to move me out of the United States. Because had I kept remaining there, like I would be doing seminars, I would be doing conventions, I would have stepped across the United States. In fact, that was the first idea that came to my mind when I came out from the activation, to do a campaign where we were going to people were going to tie their ties, like the tie that you have on your neck, businessmen, they were going to tie their ties across the entire United States. And it was going to be funded by this group that was basically a group of corporations that were willing to sponsor a person to get one day off. And it was different kinds of ideas to do different things, like even going and taking down the negative cabal based in Las Vegas inside of the Luxor Pyramid. There was information being translated. It was basically like, this is some of the differences. I'm noticing now the subtle difference between different magical systems. But it appears that the darker magical systems, such as the Goetia, do things like enlisting beings in order to go and do certain things for you, etc. However, there is another system that basically is the same thing that we use when we call upon ancestors, universal energies, or etc., just to know what's going on. Meaning, open up ye gates. This is what you're asking. The veils to be removed so you can see what's really there. It's like you're right anyway. Just let me know what I'm dealing with. This is your right. But because most people ask, let me know what I'm dealing with and do something for me, give me the power. They've had all this other stuff. You have to be very specific when dealing with this kind of energy or it just goes void. It doesn't work. So what happened was that I was able to see across the United States and across the land to where the hub for the negative energy was coming from. And because the energy coursing through you is so powerful, they would just have to destroy you because in your mind you feel indestructible. You feel your indestructibility is based on your mind, body, and soul. You see what I mean? So you feel like you don't feel indestructible because you know you can't. So then you're almost, for better lack of words, you're locked into a perpetual energy that no one can stop. So this is obviously something that wasn't the first one for it to happen to. So it appears that they were nudging me through what appeared to be my own suggestions out of the United States. So that's kind of how that thing transpired. So, but I'm still here. It hasn't really slowed things down from my perspective. I actually decided to definitely take it virtual, which exposes more people to the information and the knowledge, etc. So to me, it's a win-win situation anyway, and that's what we talked about before in these other shows, is that make it so that their low is low, their high is still your lowest low. And that no matter what, even the worst case scenario is still the best case scenario for you. That's what we're talking about. And that's the person who has the real mastering over what's going on in the dimension, because the dimension is just them. Like, that's what happens when you go into these higher state of consciousness. You realize, like, this entire construct is still projected from you. People can write themselves out of the program. So that's also why you have to look at everyone that experiences different levels of life as having their own experience. You can help them along, you can do things, but don't get into the pity party in the pit with them, because any person can program themselves out of the universal reality through their own consciousness of where their soul is at already if it's attained physicality. So regardless of what it's actually experiencing here, it is still chosen to give it another shot. There is no guarantees of what the person and the being will experience here. That's all of what the whole thing about a lesson is. You don't know what's going to happen. So, but if you know that that's still better than the other one, which is basically doing nothing because of the dimension that you've already been confined on, if you give it another shot, then give it a good shot. And that's what we're dealing with now. Many people are back here now in order to actually convey a positive message to many individuals as they're balancing of their karma of all the other stuff that they've been doing, because they have parts of Shaddai or the shadow being, they have parts of the reptilian being, they have parts of these Metatron-like creatures and Michael and Raphael and all the rest of the gang, they have parts of these koalas, all these horn gods. We have all of this within us. So the test now is, what are you choosing to amplify? What does your design and pattern look like? Because it doesn't matter the universe. It can fit you in anyway. It just becomes another piece to the multiverse, to the universe. But because you're conscious, you get a chance to choose now what exactly existence you want to be in. And don't let that be taken from you because of, and this is what we're bringing across now, because some idiots have now, because of their clout and their money and their fake currency and their weird alchemy, put themselves on a pedestal that what they're doing is the best thing to do, and then it leads everyone into that frequency. You see it happening. It's as real as anything else, and it's definitely going to have a binding effect. This is what we talked about, the last but not least. It was something that me and Crystal talked about, but it's almost like common sense. If you have, some people are asking, is what you do in this world really matters? If it will really carry, or is it just an experience? The 100% answer to that question is, when you have a child, you can't just decide after you have that child that, I'm gone. I don't want that child anymore, and I'm going to go do something else. No, you have now created something, so you must see it run its course, however that runs its course in your life. So what this means is that there are things that you can do that carry over for prolonged periods of time. And so this is what we're actually dealing with our vibrational frequency, is severing certain levels of unharmonic or distorted communications, or at least our perception of them, and then being able to take our entire existence into an entirely different reality that is already available. It's just a more expansive frequency that, again, humanity has been locked out of, but now has the opportunity to enter with this kind of knowledge. We only have 9 more minutes in the show, or seconds. I wanted to say wholeness and balance vibration to everyone, and thank you for tuning in. And I want to say thank you also to the panel, Wes and Crystal, and we're out of here.